Now I can actually introduce one of my closest friends in the world as a Hall of Famer. We found out on Friday. I got a little verklempt on the air.
You did.
And now we get a chance to tell him to his face. He, by the way, told Andrew he has to be introduced as the Hall of Famer Mike Breen from now on.
Said that?
Yeah, he said that's like
gonna...
Joe DiMaggio always had to be called the greatest living player. Mike said, when I come on now, it's the Hall of Famer Mike Breen. Am I right, Mike?
That's just mean. It's just mean.
I think he's asking friends to do it, too.
I thought I was coming on to talk about the Mets.
No. This is more interesting. So you're actually asking your children to say Hall of Fame Dad, the whole deal, right?
He's signing bills at restaurants.
Right,
yeah.
In the comment section on the check, he puts HOF.
HOF, yeah.
Keep going. I'm glad you guys are enjoying this.
Hit King.
No, he's not the hit king. No.
I just love how Pete Rose signs everything.
All right, so let's get serious here. You had found out before Friday, before everybody else did, and you were only allowed to tell your wife, Ro. When you first found out, first reaction?
It teared up a little bit, and you just immediately start thinking about all the people that are responsible for it. And that takes a long time in my case because I've tried to start in my head, make a list of all the people I need to thank, and it's a long list. So that's the first thing. You know, it's emotional, but it's mainly like I've got so many people to thank. It's my agenda now for the next several weeks.
And you had mentioned that's not something you dream of. You dream of being the Nick announcer, but you don't dream about going to the Hall of Fame.
No, Don, and I said this the other day, it's to me, the privilege is being able to announce these games. As far as I'm concerned, I hit the Mega Millions, the Lotto, the jackpot when I got the job just to be an NBA announcer and to be able to sit courtside. That's my job. I have the greatest job in the world, and you never think that, it's great enough that you get paid to do it, but then to receive some recognition is just beyond what you think. It's really been very overwhelming. I've had the last 3 days have been the most humbling 3 days maybe of my life, and at the same time the most heartwarming because I've heard from so many people that I've worked with that are a part of all this. I've heard some people I went to school with in high school, people I grew up in my neighborhood, family, friends, colleagues, my play-by-play brethren. It's just, it's really emotionally, it's been overwhelming, and you thank the blessings. I've been blessed in so many ways, and it's really smacked me in the face over the last couple of days.
Well, Mike, I got to tell you, I'm a little bit embarrassed because I saw you on Friday night, and I was so concerned with telling you how good a job I thought you did a few weeks ago that when I was prepping for the celebrity game, I got an email from ESPN, and the subject was Mike Wilbon and Mike Breen. And then my buddy Kaz, who's with me, says, the Hall of Famer to Mike Breen.
Right.
I still don't put it all together that I need to be congratulating this man on entering the Hall of Fame. So I want to apologize and say officially, congratulations.
Oh, well, thanks, Peter. Don't be silly. I mean, you had a blast the other day. It was a fun event, and that's all. You got to worry about your job. That's what we all worry about. That's nice of you.
The funniest part, though, Mike, was he said to me, he goes, Michael's sent me a text tonight. And Mike, I could tell me that when you were talking about Michael's text, you almost appeared like you were going to choke up. And I'm like, what is this guy so emotional about? And
well,
now,
Michael sends me a text pretty much every day that gets me choked up. So it wasn't out of the norm.
It was just your Friday text, right?
Yes, it was the usual. The Friday text is has a little more feeling to it.
I really bring those.
Wednesday.
Yeah, I also used the kids yesterday on I think that was the Saturday text.
Oh my goodness!
Kids made a video.
He sends me a video of his two adorable children. So it was, man, I've been on an emotional roller coaster. I need to stop crying. I've been crying on the air a little bit too much recently, and that has to stop.
Well, this will loosen you up. So all these people that you haven't heard from in a while that are like checking in. Hangers on, reflective glory, cut them out, drain the swamp. It's the people that have been around you the whole time. Those are the ones you take their congratulations, embrace them. The other people, forget it. They're just in it for the wrong reason. They're trying to cash off. Yeah, they are. Stop.
Why
have you not heard from them until you became a Hall of Famer?
You didn't say that you didn't hear from them.
He has not heard from these people.
There are some that I haven't heard in a long time, but you lose contact with people. It's my fault as much as their fault.
They weren't asking for money.
No, it's all.
That'll come.
Good.
The money asking will come.
Wonderful.
The money asking will come. You watch.
I know you're so humble for this, but I think it's a book or a documentary. The fact that you go to school with Michael and he dreams of being the Yankee announcer, you dream of being the Knick announcer, and those dreams come true. I mean, that's just phenomenal to be able to be so specific with a dream and have it happen.
Well, Don, I'll tell you a story from when I was a freshman at Fordham. I didn't know anybody when I went to Fordham, not a soul, and none of the kids from my high school, none of the kids from my neighborhood. So I went, and one of the main reasons was to join the radio station WFUV to learn how to be a sportscaster. But I would go into the radio station, and I didn't know anybody, and I was really awkward. I was the type, and this is true, in between classes, if I had like an 8:30 class and a 10:30 class, in between the two classes when I had time, I wouldn't go to the cafeteria. I felt if I sat there by myself, I'd look like a loser. So I was even worse. I'd go back to my car.
That's what I did, too.
And I would sit in my car for the hour by myself because I didn't have friends at Fordham. So I go up to FUV, and I started hanging around, and they had these workshops, and I just, I was kind of introverted. I was shy, and I didn't know anybody until one day I go up there, and there's this other student who is having a yelling match, and a fun one, but a yelling match with another student. And I'm thinking, this guy's pretty funny. And I walked over to him, and I introduced myself to him, and he introduced himself back, and then he introduced me to everybody that was in the area. And all of a sudden, I felt like I belonged. And it was an important time because I was ready to kind of, I don't want to say give up, but it was not enjoyable for me. And that person was Michael Kay.
How about that, Peter?
Not surprising.
What do you mean not surprised? You don't think one good thought about me, so don't say not surprising.
Hey, I don't want to, Mike. I don't want to get into the details of it because it was a private conversation. But would you say, based on the conversation that me, you, and your lovely wife had about Michael, that I don't think highly of Michael Kay?
Say that again. What?
That was a horrifying sentence. I'm going to try again. Would you say, based on the conversation that you, your wife, and I had on Friday about Michael, would you say that Michael's statement about how I feel about him is inaccurate? I feel very strongly about him, wouldn't you say?
Yes, there's no question.
Boy, Mike was just bothered by that question.
Boy, it was horrifying. He's a great journalist, and what he heard was just a jumble of words.
I don't know what I just answered.
Yeah,
but I don't know if that was the proper answer.
Well, I want to get your take on this because we opened the show, and I can't tell you how riveted I was to that fourth quarter of play yesterday. Those are the best players in the world, the best players in the NBA for sure, all 10 of them, and they're playing, and they really want to win. They were playing real basketball, real defense. I loved it. How about you? You see more basketball than any of us. What did you think?
Well, it was my favorite quarter of this NBA season. Of any game, I felt like I was watching a playoff game. And when I was a kid, I loved the All-Star game. It's been a long time since I felt like that. I was jumping off the couch. I mean, to have coaches' challenges, guys picking up charges, having timeouts, having double teams, it was incredible. I thought it was one of the most enjoyable things I've seen in an All-Star game in my entire life. It could not have gone any better. It was such a wonderful tribute to Kobe Bryant for these players, but I think it's more than that. I think that format lends itself to the competitive spirit of all these great players. It was fantastic.
Yeah, you kind of answered my question. I wanted to know, did you think it was more about Kobe or the format? Because with everything that happened 3 weeks ago, you had to lay it all on the line last night.
No doubt, but Don, I think it's also in a situation like that, they figured out a formula that gets the competitive juices flowing. And that's why all these guys, yeah, they all have their God-given talent, but these guys are all, they're as competitive as anybody, and they wanted to win, and it took a hold of all of them. You could even see, like, guys were mad they were being taken out of the game. Guys were, like, screaming at the refs for every call. It was unbelievable. It really reminded me of an elimination game, of a playoff game. That's how intense it was. It was such a treat to watch, and especially when you have the best players in the world going at it like that.
Now, I know you've always had great empathy for the officials, and I kept thinking those guys thought All-Star game, this is a nice plum assignment. And all of a sudden, they're in this, like, cauldron of pressure, and people are barking at them. They must say, what's going on here?
Oh, there's no doubt. I felt so bad for them because that's what it is. It's almost like a little vacation for the officials. You can bring your family. You kind of hang out. It's just one of those where everybody's relaxed. You know, it's like a spring train when you go down and do spring training games for the Yankees. It's like, oh, this is the fun part. And you could tell it's like all of a sudden you had to put that switch on. I think everybody was surprised. Even the players who were involved in the game of how that intensity became, you know, like I said, like Game 7, like it was just for it to turn like that. You couldn't have asked for anything better if you're the players, if you're the NBA, and certainly for the fans.
Is there any part of you that has a desire to call the All-Star game, or is it the perfect time to just chill out and enjoy?
Well, I mean, to me, it's an honor to call the All-Star game, and you know, one of the fun parts last night of watching it was, you know, Marv Albert has called as many big games as anybody who's ever called basketball, and he was so juiced, he was so into it, and it was great, and you could tell because he's done so many, like he was even like, I can't believe this is happening. This is an all-star game, and all these things are happening. So for me, that was part of the enjoyment. But no, for any announcer, doing an all-star game would be an honor. So that's the type of thing. But I do love, I love as a fan watching the stuff, and I was a big fan last night, leaping off my couch.
I looked at there was one hot point there where I said, this is real good. And it was early in the fourth quarter when Lowry tried to take the charge from LeBron. Mike, nobody takes charges in all-star games, and he threw his body in front of an oncoming train. I said, this is going to be awesome.
Right. No, I agree. I said the same thing. There was also another one, like, I think it was Kawhi Leonard got the ball on the left wing. They triple-teamed him. Yep. I mean, there's not even double teams in an all-star game, and they triple-teamed him. It meant so much for them to win and conquer the other team, conquer the other group of these spectacular players. And I love the fact that it was continuous and there was no clock. I mean, basketball is all about a game and there's a clock, so that's what you go by. But no, it was like everybody who's ever played basketball on the playground, you enjoyed it because that's, you know, I remember every day in the summer going down and the first to 21 wins, and that's what it was like. It brought back so many memories of childhood, I'm sure, for a lot of people who grew up playing in the park.
Now, Andrew Gunling has suggested earlier in the show that he's ready to have all NBA games like that. He said because the worst part of an NBA game, final 2 minutes with all the fouling, and that's not the case now. Fouling hurts you because it's clicking points off toward that total. Can you see the NBA ever doing this?
Well, I've learned over time never to say never, but I think this is closer to never than most things are. I think that would be really hard to do. I mean, after last night, I can see people think, oh, this would be a great idea. But there's a lot of other intangibles that go along that I think might make it very difficult to do.
And last night, a great appetizer for what should be a real fun second half of the season, Mike. Can you remember the last time we've had like this many teams that could legitimately win a championship?
Yeah, that's what's so much fun, Don. I mean, we were pretty much, okay, Golden State and Cleveland's going to be in the finals. And even though there was always a potential for an upset, they were clearly the favorite, and I think this year it's wide open. Now, I do believe the two LA teams in the West and Milwaukee in the East are the favorites, but I don't think they're clear-cut favorites. I think both in the West and in the East, there are teams that could easily come out of there and easily win a championship, depending on the matchups.
All right, so Hall of Famer now. Let's ask you some nostalgia questions. Favorite game you've ever called?
That's really hard to do. You know, for me as a Knicks fan growing up, the Game 7 when they beat the Pacers to advance to the NBA Finals back in '94. I was doing radio at the time. That's something I'll never ever forget. I think anytime you do a Game 7 of an NBA Finals, and I've done 3 of them now. It's incredible. Gold medal games in the Olympics have always been really, for me, emotional, especially when it's on foreign soil. Those are special. So there's there's too many to pin down to one, Michael. I don't mean to cop out on the answer, but that's the truth.
Now, I said this on Friday, and I don't want you to be uncomfortable, but I did say this, and we started to think why, and I'm going to throw my thought at you. Of all the national announcers, a lot of people hate Joe Buck, and Joe Buck is great. But there's a segment that he's against my team, blah, blah, blah. Some people don't like Jim Nance. Some people don't even like Al Michaels. I don't know. You're the one national guy that does the finals that you never read that on Twitter. Oh, I hate Breen. Never, ever. All the other guys, as great as they are, there's a segment that for some reason doesn't like them. And I think that...
I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you there for 1 second.
Okay.
It's happened in most finals where, for example, L.A.-Boston. Boston have the first 2 games. Then you go into L.A. in Game 3 as you come into the arena. The Laker fans are saying, oh, it's clearly you're rooting for the Celtics. Come on, stop rooting for the Celtics. Then you do the 2 games or 3 games sometimes, depending on what year, in L.A. You go back to Boston, and the Celtic fans are yelling at you because you're a Laker lover. So it happens still all the time.
But not to the level of Joe Buck. I mean, Joe Buck gets excoriated because, and I think it's unfair because I think he's a great announcer. Not good, great.
He's as talented as anybody who's ever done this. I'm in awe of how he makes it look easy time and time again, so I don't get it either. But I see your point about the Knicks stuff, but I did Knick playoff games back when I was working at NBC.
Right.
A bunch of Knick Pacer playoff games back in the Ewing and Oakley eras. And, you really have to, because, it's part of you growing up as a Knick fan. But I took great pride in making sure the Pacer fans didn't think I was rooting for the Knicks in those games. And sometimes you might even go overboard the other way to make sure that it's not looking like you're rooting for another team when it's your team. And the Knicks obviously have been my team since I was a child. But I did have some experience with that, and I never really got feedback that, oh, man, it's clearly you're rooting for the Knicks. You're a Knicks fan. You're a Knicks broadcaster.
But now that you've emerged, I mean, you are the voice of the NBA Finals for so many years now, and I think that you've benefited in a weird, obtuse way that the Knicks are bad. The Knicks have been bad for 20 years, so nobody could say, oh, the Knicks aren't there when you're calling those games, so you never have to really deal with it. Buck had to deal with the Cardinals being in it so many times. He grew up a Cardinal fan. Jack Buck was his dad. You never had to measure up to the fact, well, the Knicks are playing Team X, because the Knicks never played Team X during this last 20 years.
Yeah, well, I think I probably speak for a lot of Knicks fans is I hope I get the chance to see if I have that ability to remain neutral during Knicks big games.
Does that freak you out, the idea of, another 20 years pass, you're mulling retirement, and you never got to see them go on a truly great run?
I'm mulling retirement?
I jumped 20 years.
No, he's giving you 20 till you're 80.
In 20.
Calm down,
oh, my goodness. No, you know what? Guys, it's just, I said this the other day, too. Certainly would I love the Knicks to be one of the best teams in the NBA and play big games night after night, obviously. But every night you sit down there, as a kid growing up in New York and lived my whole life, and sitting next to Walt Frazier, every night you just don't know what's going to happen. Tonight could be the night that the Knicks play their best game of the season, or a particular player has a record-setting performance. So it's, I know it sounds hokey, but it's such a privilege just to call the games. Yes, you want your teams to do well. You want every game to be fun and exciting, but it never, ever gets tired. And, there's always hope that next year is going to be better, and next year they're going to turn it around.
Don't you think that now that you're a Hall of Famer, that the Mets should ask you to throw out the first pitch? I mean, you love the Mets so much, you deserve to throw out the first pitch.
No, I just love being at Citi Field rooting for my team, by the way, which will be my only concern regarding the Mets is the World Series schedule this year and the NBA preseason schedule.
Wow. I like the confidence.
Very cocky.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about right now, because we will be in the World Series, so it's a matter of, can I work my NBA preseason schedule around the World Series games?
I love the attitude. You mentioned working at NBC. Do you miss doing football?
I do. It's an unbelievable sport to broadcast, and it's really fun. It's also really hard, and I haven't done it so long. So, but I also love my I go so crazy during the course of the NBA season that it's nice to really just kind of chill out for a few months and be a family man and relax.
You know, with the Hall of Fame designation now, there's probably going to be bumps in salary. So are you thinking about buying the Mets?
I don't think there's going to be bumps in salary. That's nice of you. Perhaps you can make a couple of phone calls for me when you're done with your show today.
Well, I mean, a lot of people listen to the show. Maybe they'll make a call for you.
All right, that would be one of the most helpful things you've ever done for me.
Thank you.
But I'm very happy with where I'm at right now. But I appreciate the offer.
Well, I'm just saying, if there's an influx of money, you could buy the Mets. I know you love the Mets.
I do love the Mets.
MSG would make him, or SNY would make him give up the Nick gig.
Oh, really? But if he owned the Mets, he'd own SNY, too.
What's wrong? You guys need other things to talk about.
This is why the show works so well.
All right. Well, Mike, all kidding aside, I can't speak for these two slugs, but I am so happy for you and so proud, and
Yes.
I just can't believe it. And even though you insist, I was going to call you Hall of Famer Mike Breen from now on anyway.
I love you, my brother. And, guys, thank you so much.
Congrats, man.
Be well. That's Mike Breen, Naismith Hall of Fame winner, Naismith Basketball
So
Hall of
well
Fame.
deserved. And he's